and welcome to the Deerland Podcast. It's episode number 6. We're here at Deerland HQ today. I'm your host, Mike Boley. I'm joined today by the big buck killer himself, Mr. Louis Zinn. How are you, Lou?
I'm doing wonderful, Mike.
And also sitting across from me is our resident land specialist. He is Tyler Sellens. How are you, Tyler?
I'm doing well. It's a nice snowy day out.
It is. It's still November. Tell you what, guys, we're running out of November in a hurry.
Yep. The sweetness is wearing off.
It is. It's about time for official late season to begin. Mm-hmm. We still have a couple gun seasons to get through here in Illinois, though. We got our second shotgun season opening up in about 36 hours from now. Thursday morning, it'll be time to get back out there and join the Orange Army again. And I'm ready. I'm excited for it. I always try to be optimistic when it comes into gun season. I'm sure by Saturday morning it may be a little bit different. I don't know. But usually Thursday and Friday are somewhat slow as far as pressure and other people out there hunting. So we'll see. The weather looks to be better Thursday and then progressively deteriorate as we get into the weekend. But some rain, some warmer temperatures. And for us guys that have standing grains and food plots, we don't really want to see the temperatures rise and the snow be gone. And
that's right.
But nothing we can do about it. So we'll see what happens here these next couple weekends.
But if it rains, you've got those Banks blinds.
We do have the Banks blinds. Yeah, we were talking off air. I'm not worried about my comfort level with the weather. I'm worried about the deer movement. I did make it out last night, and did a sit. It was the first night after we had our blizzard 2018, I guess. Snowmageddon, yeah. It was a dandy. I was grilling Sunday night.
Flip-flops and shorts.
50-mile-an-hour winds. I had that grill turned up as high as it would go and could only get 300 degrees out of her because that wind was howling. But
yep.
So I made it out to the Banks blind, just kind of, more of an observation, if anything. And some does, lots of does. Deer numbers, totals, I don't know if I was seeing some of the same deer. I had 9 deer at one time out in the field, but there may have been 18 total. Right at the end of the night, 4 minutes before legal shooting light, had a big one come out, a good-looking deer, come out and headed straight for the beans. Unfortunately, he went to the plot that was the furthest away from my location. Mm-hmm. If it would have been shotgun season, I would have had a perfect broadside 134-yard shot at him. So
you made that new shotgun make a little noise.
Yeah, I would have let her bark, and I'm excited to do that. But we'll see. I'm going to hunt some mornings yet, I think. I was kind of on the fence about that, but Tyler and I were talking last night, and it's just hard to pass up a sit with a gun. We don't get very many of them. We get 10 days a year to carry a firearm into the deer woods. So essentially 20 sits, and I don't like to miss any at all. So I'm going to give it a shot. It's a little risky. Try to get in early, but I'm walking across a large food plot, a 4-acre food plot with an 8-acre field essentially. So they could very well be out there feeding, but I try to get out in the dark and you be quiet walking across that clover. If you can stay,
you could always stage up at the edge of the field. Just kind of get there right at first daylight, just to see if there's deer out in it, and if there's nothing, then go on across it.
And a lot of guys do that. If they got to walk across a destination field where they know there's deer, they'll go in at whether it's good and light, or they'll just sit and wait and watch, and then sneak in, and kind of like a spot and stalk, but you're actually trying to avoid the deer instead of finding one.
And I've thought about that as well. I made it in the 3 days of gun season. I made it in just fine each morning. Cut her close a couple times. I mean, the one morning, it was dark, and I had a doe come in, 8 feet from the blind. I just happened to be like wiping off the fog of the windows or something. Look out, and there she is, right outside the blind. But I didn't bust any getting in or out. So I'm going to give it a shot. If I had the right wind, I would probably hunt one of my timber stands. I think is close to buck bedding, but the winds just aren't going to cooperate. It looks like a lot of east wind this weekend. So
southeast, east, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to do some south and then turn in and then eventually work its way to east and then stay east for a day or two.
Yeah.
As a half inch, 3/4 inches of rain comes in Friday night into Saturday, I think. So I don't know.
That should make it nice and muddy. Time all this snow melts.
Oh, man, it's gonna
throw
be
some rain on top of it. It's going to be a disaster.
It's already wet, and and then the freeze and the snow, it made things a little bearable. Like walking out to our blind last night, it was good and solid, and we weren't slipping and sliding. But
even
this weekend's going to be different.
In my timber, I have to go down a pretty good hill, and it's kind of a path where I bring my tractor and stuff in and out. And walking down it, I took a couple steps where I got down to the ground, and it was slick down there.
It's still muddy
spots
underneath.
Underneath
snow.
all the snow. So
it was warm before the snow came, and then it just
insulated it.
Yeah, it's based on insulation over these cool temperatures we have, so it's not going to freeze underneath right now.
Yeah, I think I read something where from the National Weather Service that they posted on Facebook that they had gotten like 12 inches of rain or 12 inches of snow at that weather station, and it was down to like 8 inches. And they said what was causing that is thawing from the bottom, and that they had like 40 degrees at 4 inches of under topsoil. So the ground was still a little bit warm. Well, I hunted Saturday evening, and it was 59 degrees, I think. It was sunny and 59, and then the next day is when Snowmageddon showed up. And the ground was still fairly warm. So
sure. Well, we didn't get a lot of snow. 4 or 5 inches? But
I had about 8 up by me.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the further north and west you went, that's where the heavier bands were. So even just 20 miles from one another or so, 15.
Yeah, it's just the way it came in. It was blowing sideways. And one thing I noticed even coming down my driveway is since that snow was coming out of the west and the north, even the trees are coated white. Even the normally a snow catches the leaves and the tops, but even the sides of the trees are white.
I noticed that in areas where the wind would swirl, like over blow over the ridge top, you could see where the line of kind of the wind would go because everything below that was covered in snow on the trees and stuff. It's kind of neat.
Yeah,
I was out
sticky.
I was on the road today quite a bit and saw quite a bit of stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
It froze to about everything. That's for sure.
Cold, wind chills, negative temperatures, which is what we want. Guys that have standing corn, standing beans, that's the type of stuff we want. But with the incoming warmer temperatures and it being late November, you're not. It was kind of different. We're not used to hunting November with
snow and cold temperatures.
Snow, cold. I was just sitting there thinking, well, it's, if it was December 20th instead of November 20th, I think I'd have a little bit better chance of seeing a mature deer. But since it's still late November, I think they're probably still out searching for the last one coming into heat. But
I've always thought like that late, starting into December when they're really hitting the food I've always been a big fan of just kind of letting the deer get on a pattern on some of those food sources and then start to hunt them instead of being the first one. I know it's you want to hunt when you can, but
I also think that my observation, when a buck goes through a hard rut, he'll almost hibernate. He'll lay and hibernate for maybe a week just to regain some of that energy. And then he'll hit the food sources in December or whenever it is.
I was reading an article today, I think it was from the QDMA, and talking about the changes that a buck goes through during the rut. And they will lose 25 to 30% of their pre-rut body weight. And then they will get to a point once the rut is wound down and the temperatures get cold that they will have a negative intake of calories.
Right.
They will burn more calories just staying alive and laying there than what they can intake at that time of year. So I think you're right. The bucks will just kind of hunker down and maybe try to bed somewhat close to some food, but they're not going to move very far until they can kind of get rejuvenated a little bit. I don't think a lot of people realize just how physically demanding that rut is on some of these deer. It's just unbelievable.
Some of them, it'll kill them.
Yes.
It'll absolutely kill them. Yeah. Not by fighting, not by breeding, just absolutely.
Just running
for 30 days, not eating, hardly
they
drinking.
They go on a bender essentially is what it is. No,
like a George
sleep.
Jones,
yes.
George Jones style bender.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's a good analogy right there. So it's tough on them. It really is, and that's why I hope having the food, maybe.
Well, I think we're going to touch on this in this episode.
Yep.
But the way I've kind of kept track of bucks is through trail cameras.
Right.
And it seems like my trail cameras go cold from, say, November 25th to December 5th or 10th, depending on how cold it is, obviously. It's like, where do they go? I don't think they go far at all. I don't think they move.
They almost turn into homebodies.
It's almost like a bear during the winter. They crawl underneath the tree and they might get up and go browse within 50, 100 yards, but they're so worn out and tired, they're just not moving.
So I just want to touch on one other topic before we move on here. We were talking about the rut, and then maybe some of those mature bucks are still out looking. Last night, I do believe I had a fawn that must be close or had come in. There was a doe and a couple fawns out feeding nearby me, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this fawn come flying out of the timber and ran into another piece of wooded area. And I expected to see a buck right on her heels, and I didn't. About 15 minutes later, this 3-year-old that I had seen on the other end of the food plots earlier in the evening, he popped out kind of where she was, and then he must have caught her trail, because the second time I've seen this, where I've seen a deer like cut a trail and it seems like they get excited, and I don't know how I'm figuring that out, but that's just when I look at them, it seems like they're excited. They start running. It's not one of those scared, get out of here runs. It's like, oh, wow, I think I'm onto something, and he caught a trail, and then he ran, followed it for a while, then he lost it. And he ended up in my Nebraska plot kind of milling around and eating for a while. So I think, she's either getting close or they think she's getting close or something. I don't think the rut's quite over with. I think maybe there's some fawns. Not all your fawns are going to come in year one, but the ones that do are getting close, and then any doe that you missed the first time around. I mean, they say, and I believe that I had my first doe come in about the 28th of October, the last 2 years, about the 28th of October. And then they say that it'll take about a month or so, to that next cycle. And if they didn't get it the first time, then they may come back in now. And so maybe that's what we're seeing here, the 27th of November. So, but our topic today is going to be on trail cameras. We're going to give you a little bit of a tutorial of what we do. Not that what we do is the right way to do it. We have a little bit different strategies, I'm sure. We haven't really talked about what we all do exactly, but we're going to tell you our systems, when we put them out, where we put them, when we decide to move them and why, and kind of what we see on them. I'm kind of like Louie right now. My cameras are slowing up. I checked them last Saturday, I think it was. No. Yeah. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I checked him after gun season.
I can look through my text messages and tell you. I usually get a flood of texts after he checks cameras.
It was like 4 or 5 days after gun season, so it was the end of the week last week maybe. No, it was Thanksgiving Day. That's when it was. Yes, Thanksgiving. So Thursday I checked them. Hadn't checked them since like the 5th or 6th of November. Obviously had a lot of great pictures up through November 13th. Tons of good pictures, actually.
13th was a good day.
It was. And actually, the 9th, 10th, and 11th, I had my target buck in daylight for 4 of those 6 mornings or evenings. And I was hunting all of those sits except for the morning of the 10th, and that was that Saturday morning that it was brutal cold out.
Ooh, tell me about it.
And I didn't get out of bed. And the reason why is it was so flippin' cold that morning, but it was a south wind. And I had hunted this spot where I knew he would be. I had hunted it the morning of the 9th, the night of the 9th, and then the morning of the 11th I got called out for a call at work and wasn't able to hunt that morning, but then I hunted that afternoon to that same stand. And I would have hunted probably that 10th if I would have had the right wind, but I got to have some sort of a north there. And sure enough, I mean, he walked by it twice, and another mature buck walked by that stand that morning on the 10th. The morning of the 9th, he actually walked, when I was sitting in that stand, he walked by my blind and then by another stand that I had. We'd gotten some snow that morning. And then on the 11th, I got in about 3 o'clock, and he was there at 2:34. I don't know where he went. And then I don't think I seen him maybe again on the 13th, and then we seen him in person on the 14th, and then that was the last that I've seen of him. So
it's just a big game of cat and mouse.
It is, you know, and
right place, right time is what a lot of it is, and just got to get in and put your time in the stand.
And I know that's a good stand. Louis was talking about hunting close to bedding, 50 yards or so to bedding. And I believe that my one stand where I'm seeing a lot of this activity on camera with this buck, I believe he's bedded within 50 or 75 yards of there. And if he does make it or has made it and has made it back home, which I believe that, his home is close to me because I had him in velvet, all season. He's been there all season. So I'm hoping he's going to show back up, and maybe he'll decide to take up home range at my place and feed on some of the food that I've got available. So that's my plan. But this deer that come out last night was a whole new deer. So
how many cameras do you run on your farm?
Right now I've
15
got
or
no,
16.
I've got 11. I've got 15 cameras, but I got 4 of them that are no longer in workable order. So this one stand that we were just talking about.
1 per 2 acres, Louis. So you're going to need about 120 here.
So what I've done is I've used these cameras to help me get a better idea these last 4 years of where the deer are moving. I'm not a mobile hunter.
Mm-hmm.
I set stands up hopefully by August, and I run a couple stands and a couple blinds. And where I'm at's where I'm at, Sure. They're ladder stands, so they're not easily moved. And I got a livered eye by them. And the last couple of years has been rough. This year I've used my trail cameras to get a better understanding of where some of these deer are moving and the stands that I need to be sitting in. So I run 11 on 35 acres. I have about 40 acres of territory, I guess, now with the permission ground next to me that I haven't went in on that yet and put a lot of cameras there. But so this one stand that I'm talking about that I have had the most encounters and daylight pictures of this target deer, I've got 5 cameras within 50 yards of this stand.
You don't want to miss anything.
No, well, there's 2 in the timber covering 2 different trails that, the deer were hopping the fence and coming in one spot, and then there was another main trail that ran down through the center of the timber. And these 2 cameras are only 20 yards apart, but they're facing 2 separate trails.
Sure.
And then I've got a camera right on the edge of the timber facing a licking stick. And it also is kind of where the deer can come from about 3 different ways and come to that one point. And then I've got 2 cameras there that are on scrapes that were pretty active. And
are these no-glow cameras, or do you have them infrared? Or what
infrared.
are you running, Mike? Let's get into the details.
Most all of my cameras are Wild Game Innovations. I did move up a little bit last year, and I bought 2 Bushnell E2s, I think. I bought the year older model because they said it was better than the E3s. But so my rule of thumb had always been for years is to run the wild games, but I've never paid over $50 for any of my cameras. Yep. So I wait until some of their more expensive ones will go on sale. So, and I've used them for several years, and I had great luck actually with their cheaper models other than the ones that were more expensive that are on sale. I've had a couple of those that just haven't worked out very well. But at the time, I needed to do quantity over quality.
Yeah.
I really wanted to figure out what these deer were doing. I'm only one guy. I can only,
Sure.
hunt so many different spots. And I feel that strategy has started to pay off for me now, finally. So,
well, in all reality, you could buy 8 or 10 of a wild game $50 camera, and there's a lot of other companies that make $50 cameras. You could buy 8 or 10 of those for a price of these high dollar.
And that was
cameras,
my exact
these
theory.
Reconics or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've always done, and it served me well. I've got a couple of these that they're just old reliable. I mean, they take decent pictures at night. I mean, and I was at the point where I didn't need to know, is this thing, does he have a kicker off his left G2, or does he have anything coming off his brow tine? I didn't need to know that. I needed to know what kind of frame. Is this a somewhat mature deer or a young buck, or is it a buck or a doe? That's all I was trying to figure out.
Sure.
So
sometimes those pictures you've sent me, it was either a buck or a doe, and you couldn't tell much after that.
That was it.
Yeah, and that's
so. What are the frustrations? We all have. When you get to talking about trail cameras, typically we talk a lot about the frustrations of a trail camera. What have you had frustration-wise?
So I've got a couple of these wild games, and I don't know the models of them offhand, but I bought 4 of them at one time, and 2 of them just haven't been working out well. I mean, I put one of them over a scrape that I physically sat in the stand and watched deer go up, mess with, walk by, and then you go to check cards. They're not there. It's taking pictures.
Right.
I just don't know of what, and it's only taken 5 or 6 pictures. So that's been the biggest frustration, I guess. I did have one a couple years ago that died out on me. I didn't have a receipt. I didn't know where I bought it, when I bought it. I got a hold of Wild Game, and they sent me a brand new one.
Sure.
Just replaced it. So I was happy with that. But there is a lot better options out there. The Bushnells that I bought last year, I've been happy with those. I ran a lot of the one on video a lot when I had it in front of the wild water, and got some cool video. Mm-hmm. The downside to that is you had to check it quite often, and I don't like to go out there and check them very often. 10 days is often for me. I like to give it a couple weeks. And if you have a ton of videos, I mean, even an 8 gig card, you can fill up pretty quick. And then the batteries as well will drain out of them pretty quick. But it had very good quality. And then the pictures, I've been happy with the pictures. Again, it was, I think I paid $90-something a piece for these. So it had moved up a little bit in, my price. But now I've got these set up for a 3-picture burst, which I love, because there's been several times where I was able to find out more information because it took the 3-picture burst than if it would have been just a single picture. So, so that's what I've got. I do have intentions now to start improving some of my selection of trail cameras.
Sure.
I'm going to continue to use some of these old ones. And just throw cameras or batteries in them and go put them out somewhere, especially, this new farm that I've got permission on next to me. I'll just go set them out there and see what happens, leave them out for a season and go check them later. So, but my areas that I feel that I'm going to have the most deer activity, I'm probably going to start using Reconyx cameras, I think, next year, just because I do believe that they are the best quality camera out there. The customer service is phenomenal after hearing some of your stories and stuff. So that's what I'm going to start doing.
I think a game camera is no different than how we all started hunting. We maybe start out with the Mossberg, and at some point in our life we want to graduate to the Benelli or whatever it may be. You start out with a $300 package bow from Dick's Sporting Goods, and at some point you want to get up to that Matthews or that Hoyt or Elite or whatever it is.
I started out with an 870 smooth bore, and then I went and got a Mossberg 835 combo turkey.
We work our butts off to try and be able to afford them.
Got this Ithaca, and you save up money, and it's one of those things that I do. I put money back, and I've got some side businesses and stuff that I'm involved in that I use some of that money to buy some of this stuff. I'm not using my regular money, and taking away from my family, I guess, to buy some of these things. And I don't buy them until I have the money to do so. But that's my plan for next year, is to make an investment in, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how many I can afford, but probably 3 or 4 next year, and put them up in the spots that I feel are going to be the best. And, maybe add on some more later, but maybe 4 of them, would be enough for me for now. I don't know, but
amazes me is the technology of trail cameras and how far it's come from
from
where it started to where it is now. I remember as a kid, and if I had to guess how old I was probably 10, 12 years old, probably 12 years old, somewhere in that range. And I bought back in the day when you could buy, it was Trail Camera, maybe non-typical Salute. I don't know what the company was, but it was Trail Cam.
Deer Cam.
It was just
Jury's had that one that was like a
Wild
box.
Eye.
Yeah, the Wild Eye.
That was a video.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. This is well before.
This is 35 millimeter.
This is back in the day. I mean, I bought this when I think Bass Pro Shops. You had one Bass Pro Shops in Springfield, Missouri, on vacation down there, and I probably paid a lot of money for it. I want to say several $100s, but you had to buy. You could either buy a unit that was like it would get 5. It would trip 5 times and just tell you the times, or you could get one that did like 500, but then you had an external unit that you strap to the tree,
Yeah.
and you got a 35 millimeter camera, and you put in it, and hook these wires up into your other unit, and it sent a signal to this that had a plunger that pushed the button.
I think it was like a non-typical. The non-typical.
I've still got it.
Yeah.
I kept it, and it doesn't work, but I just thought I'm going to keep that thing because one day, Spencer or his kids or somebody may look at that and probably laugh at it a little bit from what the technology is. But it was just, I remember that anticipation as a kid of, you put 36 roll exposure in there, and you'd leave it for a week and come back, and it was full, and you'd run the 1 hour photo, and
it was a raccoon.
Yeah, and you get there, you had no idea what you had. And
but some of those you actually had to stick a camera.
I had to stick a camera,
and it would hit the button.
And it had a mechanical plunger that you had the camera sitting there that would push the button on the camera to take the picture.
I think Mark Cuddyback might have been.
That may have been where that originated.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. No, I remember in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, I did run some 35 millimeter cameras. I've still got them somewhere. And that's right. You would pull the roll of film out and just that anticipation. And then I finally learned that you could talk to the photo processing technician and tell him that if there's no deer on there, I don't want those pictures. And so
$4 or $5 every time you go in there.
A lot of rolls I dropped off. We'll go to pick them up. And they say, yeah, you don't have any pictures. I'm like, all right, that's better than spending the money. But
sure,
you had to do 1 hour photo. You couldn't just drop it off and come back the next day.
No, you had to.
You had to kill an hour in Walmart.
Spend the big bucks.
So yeah, we have come a long ways, and the battery life was atrocious on those. And,
100 pictures.
I had to take them apart. You'd literally take the camera apart to put two 9-volt batteries inside of it.
Unbelievable.
And then a 9-volt battery inside. You had to completely dismantle the camera, put the battery into it. Obviously you didn't know. You just came back the next time and found out it was dead. And I went from there. I think I had maybe some old Moultries that took those big 6-volt batteries.
Yep.
I think I had one of those. And then back when I used to have a bunch of those Cuddyback captures. Love those cameras for nighttime pictures, even daytime pictures. They were always crystal clear, never any blurry photos, but they were still flash.
Yeah,
the white flash.
White flash, but
those are nice. It's cool to see those nighttime pictures that are the white flash
always
and all
good.
the color and whatnot. But
you get one picture every 30 seconds if you're lucky. Most of the time, it was more like 45 seconds if you stood there and watched it. But, man, what great pictures. But one every 30 seconds. And your deer are going to be blind for a while.
I still have a few of those cameras that still work. And I'd had one out on a tree this year just on a place that just you drive in and out and we'll walk through quite a bit. And I had a Browning. I thought, I'm going to put that Browning on top of this camera and just see. Obviously one was like every 5 seconds and one's every 30 seconds. But there was so much that Cuddyback was missing. It wasn't even funny. But.
Well, a lot of times with that Cuddyback – on that capture, you turn it to the 30-second one, and then boom, it takes a picture. It lights up the entire sky, it seems like. And either the next picture was a deer running away, or it was that same deer, like, looking at the camera.
Trying to figure out what just happened.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think,
He was half blinded, but, man, back in the day, those were the ticket. I mean, we thought they were the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they were. And I got a lot of good deer on those cameras, but you always think, man, there's got to be a better way. And
so what kind of year, what year time frame are you guys talking about with these?
About 2000.
7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
So I remember some pictures, 08 pictures.
Yeah.
That I've seen years
I got some 2004 or 5s that are with the Cuddyback capture. But before that was 35 millimeter flash. And then even when it went digital, then you had to use those big CF cards. Yeah. Which I remember having some old stealth cams with the big CF cards, and you threw C batteries in them, and I mean 80 pictures, it'd be dead.
Wow.
You'd be running and getting more batteries.
That's a lot. I mean, the new cameras, today is tenfold better on battery life than what they used to be. It used to be
gosh.
And one thing I didn't like about the captures was they never gave you a battery level. You just come back and see it'd say be low, and you didn't. And it happened like 2 hours after you left.
Those took big Ds.
Yes,
four big Ds. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
a good camera. I've still I don't run them, but I gave them to a buddy. He swears by them. Mm-hmm. It's a huge debate. We could talk all night about the debate with whether flash bothers deer or infrared. I actually think a glow might even.
It catches an eye.
It might even bother them more than the flash. Bad thing about a flash is there's that sound of that charge, and then you got the, it only has enough energy to create so many pictures every 30 to 45 seconds. But there's a big debate. There probably will always be a debate, and even some of the best cameras now have a little bit of glow. Some of my best cameras that I swear by still have a little bit of glow, and you'll catch a deer looking back at them. You don't see the white flash and tail like you do with some other flash and infrareds that really glow a lot, but there's something there. And they also still make a little bit of sound.
The glow cameras, I noticed, I've had some of those, and I would notice that your pictures would, a large majority of your pictures, you'd have the deer there, and he's already looking at the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just eyes locked on it because he's seen the glow already. Yeah, and I don't know if it put a little glow and then did actually took the picture, but
heard a little shutter, whatever that is.
But the Reconics now that I've got, they're the no glow, and I think they still have. If you really look at them, you can just barely see something. But you'll still get pictures once in a while of a deer looking at it, but you don't get the ones where they're just like locked on it and know it's there.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's something that's highly debated about the glow, the sound, and what it does to deer. There are some guys that will hang their cameras high so the deer can't see them.
Point them down.
And, maybe there's something to that. However, this deer that I'm after is a 5-year-old deer, and he has walked by the same set of cameras in daylight multiple times, and he knows it's there. Half the time you will see him check it out, but it doesn't bother him. He's not avoiding the area.
He's used to them, Mike. You got him on like every other tree. So.
And that's part of it. And I do use there are certain spots where I have a camera out about 10 months out of the year. I mean, because I'll leave them up through turkey season as well, or at least until the batteries die. But I just don't think it has that big of an effect on them.
I don't think it's a huge effect, no.
But they notice them. Don't get me wrong. They'll notice them on a tree or, notice them on a stick and pick or something around there. But a lot of times it's just a deer kind of walks like, yeah, there's something over there.
Well, and I'm telling you, too.
And they get curious about them, too. They'll come up and sniff them. How many pictures you got of a doe walking up and nose right in that camera?
Well, it's like they give off some sort of scent. I don't know if it's the battery inside of there, maybe heating up a little bit from, just from running. They must give off something. Because
it could be electrical system. I mean, it's all electrical system in it, so they may sense.
There's little processors in there.
Well, I've got 4 cameras in particular that if you go look at them, it looks like I threw them in a mud puddle, and they're just dirty. They were clean when I put them out, but the deer just go out and lick them and nose them. Mm-hmm. They'll move them. If you don't have them strapped down hard. I had the one buck. I think was trying to use my stick and pick as a rub, and I went and found it, and the stick and pick was laying 2 foot from where it was, and the camera was knocked off the stick and pick. That was from a deer. I mean, I couldn't tell what he was because when it took the picture, he was right next to the camera. Mm-hmm. But again,
I've had them come up and start rubbing on the stick and pick, and all of a sudden
they'll hook it in their antler. I think Dan Perez had that happen just a couple weeks ago. He posted on Instagram and ended up actually the deer ran with the camera, and he had a bunch of Reconics pictures of this deer, or this stick and pick stuck on this deer's antler for 50 or 60 yards or whatever. But so I don't know. I mean, there's so many things we worry about. I don't wear gloves when I go check them. I touch them with my hands.
I think it all depends on where you're putting them and the pressure that property already gets. And it goes back to the conversation we had with consistent pressure. It's no different than cameras. It's no different with cameras. If you're running your 4-wheeler and your Ranger and your chainsaw on your property, and you're also running 20 cameras, they're used to all those things. But if you're trying to stay away from your deer and trying to give them a big giant sanctuary, and then all of a sudden there's things sticking on the side of trees and on trail pods and stick and picks, then they're gonna come unglued for a while.
And I guess on my farm, I mean, there's cameras out so often, like I said, normally 9 or 10 months out of the year, but and there are other guys that'll say, if you don't, then you're going to have your scent, and, they're probably going to avoid the area for a little while. I can't tell you how many times I'll check cameras, and within an hour or two, or whenever the normal deer movement is, there's deer walking right back by it. It doesn't affect them.
They've caught several ear or nosefuls of you and your whole family, and your buggy and all that stuff.
And I do. I mean, I do set a lot of them up where I can drive the buggy to them and just drive right up, not even get off the buggy, just check them. And I have like 3 that are in the timber that I have to get off and check. And sometimes I won't check them as often if I'm just trying to do something quick. I'll just check the ones that I can get to quietly and easily.
Sure.
I try to do that too. Just have them where you can jump on a Ranger or something and you just kind of ride around and you just stop, grab a card, keep moving, go to the next one. And
Yep, that's the only way to do it. Try to put them in places where sometimes you don't even have to get off, and if you do, put your rubber boots on, take 4 steps.
I've
got stuff with the rubber gloves and spraying them down. I mean, I used to do that, and I guess I probably still would if I had a property away from here that I was just absolutely nobody was ever on. They didn't see any human disturbance, but I think we're overthinking it maybe a little too much there.
I've got some cameras that are further back into the woods that, when it's summertime and stuff and I'm out, I'm going to go check cameras. I'll just go check them all, ride the side by side, go out, check them. But once deer season's here or, it's time to start hunting, I'll lay off of those cameras. I won't check them unless I'm actually going to hunt that stand.
Yeah.
And I'll check it on the way or on the way. And a lot of times they're in very close proximity to a stand, so I'm able to.
If you're in the woods with them, in their bedrooms, absolutely. We take a little bit different precautions. Sure. As far as the scent and how we check them and when we check them.
And we were talking about, Louis, what are you running for cameras now?
Well, I've got a smorgasbord, but I've graduated to a lot of Reconics, and I thought I'd be the last guy that spent that much money on cameras. But, you start out with cameras that are frankly pretty unreliable and frustrated, and the only reason I knew they were very unreliable and maybe missing stuff is because I had friends that were running Reconics. And then you go to their farm and they're checking their Reconics, and it's just like, holy cow. And I'm talking all the way back to when Reconics came out with that camera that took the CF card and you strapped it to the tree. It was about this big.
Monstrous thing. There's still people, guys using
the juries are still using them.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Jury's still got them, and they're 15 years old. I don't know.
I think they're 10 years old. I don't remember when Reconics
They're probably every bit of 13 to 15 years old, some of those old Reconics that took the CF card.
I wanted to say Reconics was founded in 2003, but I don't know that for sure. It's on all their stuff.
Yeah. It's probably 15 years.
It has established whatever on there.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelibliable like their slogan. You don't know what you're missing, or see what you've been missing.
Yeah.
There's something to it.
They do not miss.
I mean
it's a lot of those other cameras I've had over the years, you get a blank picture. What's taking the picture after the deer's already out of the frame, or you get the hind quarters of a deer, or there's just what I find a lot of the Reconics now. The ones you have, the ones I have, is if a deer's slow walking in, you're going to get multiple pictures of that deer, or it's centered, and it's just they don't miss.
It seems to me like it's more shelf life to me. I started out with stealth cams, and they didn't last but maybe a year or two, and then all of a sudden you graduate to the cutty back captures, and they're all good cameras, but it seems like after year 2, 3, 4, 5,
start having issues.
They start having issues, or they just absolutely quit. It's almost like there's a shelf life with Reconics. It's unbelievable, the engineering and it's all about keeping the elements out of that camera. If you think about it, it's no different, than sticking any electronic device out in the woods, in the elements, through rain, snow, humidity, heat. It's just constantly changing. Think about if you just stuck your phone out in the woods, it wouldn't last hardly at all. It's all about capturing that, all that electronics and technology, and trying to keep it alive. It's got to be a huge feat. With that being said, customer service is huge, no matter if you're spending $100 on a camera or $500. If you're sticking that camera out in the woods and for whatever reason it goes bad, you got to have the faith in that company. When you call them, you're going to talk to somebody that might be a hunter that has been in your shoes that can take care of you immediately. I've got that from some of these other less expensive brands, but nothing compared to Reconyx. And with that being said, I've had Reconyx that have malfunctioned. I mean, not many, but I've had them where there's been issues where the infrared just quit. You know, all of a sudden you're getting great pictures, but at night it's just black. If you call Reconyx tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., they're going to give you an RA number. You're going to take it to UPS. They're going to tell you when they receive that camera. Within 24 hours, they're probably going to tell you what's wrong with it and tell you when you're probably going to get it back. And if they know you want it back soon, they're going to do everything they can. It's
theoretically, you could send that camera in on Monday and have it by Friday.
Yeah, if they weren't if they weren't swamped, which typically they aren't, just because they make a really good product. But you talk about a great camera. This Hyperfire 2. I've been so impressed with it. Because it's got a 150-foot flash range. Think about that. 50 yards. That deer can be 50 yards from that camera, and I've proved it. I've got a food plot this summer where I was getting a lot of deer hitting the clover, and then I planted brassicas in August, and so I had it down there from July to September, and there would be literally deer 60 yards away from that thing, and it would light them up like a Christmas tree. And you could zoom in with your software on your laptop. You could zoom in and tell exactly what they are from 50 yards. It's amazing. It's amazing what that glow can do, and it gets, you know, instead of checking your cheaper cameras and maybe only having 300 pictures, if you stick a Reconyx out, I guarantee your pictures will be double or triple what you normally get.
And a lot of people this day and age is they're getting caught up on trail cameras with the megapixels. And if you look at Reconyx cameras, your Hyperfire, I got their website pulled up here. Their Hyperfire 2 is a 3-megapixel camera.
Oh, low megapixel.
It's a low megapixel, but I think a lot, and I haven't, Mike, maybe you read into some of this.
It's about a resolution.
It's the resolution, and I don't understand exactly how they're taking.
Well, there's two different things. There's a native resolution, and then so when these other companies are saying a 12 megapixel camera, that's a digitally enhanced 12 megapixels.
That's what I was.
So with the Reconyx, you're getting a native 3-megapixel resolution, which allows you to zoom in better. I mean, like with my wild game cameras, you zoom in, and it gets hairy in a hurry, especially, your nighttime pictures. Yeah. But going back to the Reconyx, I think another big part of why they're so quality is they are made in the United States, and they use quality components, and the whole thing is quality, from the customer service to, the casing on the outside to the electronic components on the inside. Whereas, this camera I'm buying for $50 is made somewhere that's not in the United States, I'm sure, and I'm sure it is just a basic run-of-the-mill component that is used in it. And again, depending on what your end game is or what your budget is, let's be honest, there are some people that no matter what, they will never be able to afford to pay for Reconyx, and that's fine, but if you can, I mean, you are going to get what you pay for. And like Louis said,
long term, they probably could, though, if they really sit down and look at the number of cameras they're going through.
Yeah.
And they're getting frustrated and get rid of that and go get another one.
That's what it took with me.
If they buy one camera, and it's going to last them a long time. And that's, I mean, I'm on their site. They were founded in 2002.
So I knew it was somewhere in there.
Yeah. I remember when they came out, and it was like, man, that is a unique looking camera. And then CF card was kind of weird, but then you started seeing juries using them, and it was just like.
Well, in just these last few years, Louis, you talk about, you were one of those guys that said, I'm never doing that.
No, I was spending $150 to $200 on a camera. Was just like, oh my gosh, but they were only lasting maybe a year or two.
So, Tyler has had some Reconyx for a while, and he would show me the pictures and tell me, how good they were. But even then, I just couldn't justify it. And then the Hyperfire 2 comes out, and, it's a little bit more affordable. I think even their advertising this year, they said it's the most affordable camera that they've ever made.
Yeah. I think it comes in at $399.
Something like that. Yeah. So, then that gets me thinking, maybe this is something to look into. And I'm also at a point on my farm now where I think I've got some ideas of where places for a great camera would be. That this is a spot that really could use a high quality camera, and use some of these other cheaper ones for scouting missions. Essentially, just throwing them out, because I have some that I'll put out in a spot that looks like a good trail. However, you put a camera out there and nothing shows up on it. It just wasn't used that time of the year. So I will still use some of my cheaper cameras just for exploring and stuff, but the areas where I really feel that I'm on a deer, or I'm going to have my most activity during the rut, or even in velvet, I'm going to start putting some quality cameras up and getting quality pictures.
Yeah, I know we keep going on about the Reconyx and stuff, but it's the customer service. I've had accident luck. I took a new one out of the package, went to put the SD card in, and it wouldn't take it properly. I called them. I said, hey, this is the deal with it. I said, is that something normal, or am I do something wrong? It's like, no, not typically, but they said, we'll send you a new camera. It went in the mail that day. I didn't have to send that camera in and then wait on them to send me one. They just went in and sent it right to me, and I stuck the old one in the box and sent it right back. And I mean, they're just a good. I've got a lot of the XR6s, and if you're looking for a camera for videos, which I do a lot, I've run mine on a lot of videos. I take a picture and then take a 10-second video, and they take phenomenal videos. Have audio with them. It's just been a good camera. And I mean, Louis, you really like the Hyperfires, and that's one I like to get.
Yeah, the Hyperfire too. I had some Hyperfire, the HC 500, HC 600. The 500's got a little bit of glow. The 600 is completely dark. The 500 actually takes better pictures, but there's a little bit of glow so the deer look at it. And then they came out the HC or the Hyperfire 2, and I'm blown away by by the capabilities of them. And I mean, they're expensive. I mean, this sport is expensive.
It is.
I mean, let's face it.
Well, we make it that way. There's a lot of guys out there that do it on a shoestring budget, but
and the biggest reason why, and I'm the same way, and it's close to my heart because I had it happen, is theft.
Yeah.
You can't trust anybody. I had a Reconyx camera stolen 2 years ago, and it felt like somebody took ran over my dog.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a kick in the balls.
It is. It's a tough pill to swallow, that's for sure. And that is another factor that some guys have to take into account. If you're in a high-pressure area or public land or something like that, you better really be thinking about how you're going to put your Reconyx camera out.
Absolutely.
Luckily,
if you buy one, I'm just warning you.
You'll want to buy more. I've never heard anybody, I should say never, but I think you'll have to look a long time to find people that say they just do not like them.
Right.
I mean, I've got a cousin that he's tighter than a bark on a tree, and just literally, I tell him, buy Reconyx, he's kind of like, nah, I'm good with the cheap ones over here. And finally he calls me one day and is like, I'm going to buy Reconyx, It's like I've read reviews, and he says, I can't find a bad one out there, and everybody just rants and raves on them, and he says, I'm tired of fighting the 1 and 2 year cameras and batteries. And the great thing I love about them is you put a fresh set of batteries in, you can literally go put it on the tree. And if you got a big SD card in there, you can leave it there, put it up October 1st, and go pick it up the first of the year, and it's still going to be clicking.
If you had a lithium batteries and a big SD card, you could leave them out for 2 years. I mean, they're unbelievable. I got a buddy over in Iowa, and I swear to God, it's the same HC600 on the same tree with the same steel cable. The sun has hit it so much it's bleached it. He just leaves it on that tree all the time, and he very rarely does he even have to switch the batteries out.
Mm-hmm.
But they're expensive. What's cool now with these HC or these Hyperfire 2s is they've got latitude and longitude GPS in them. So you set the latitude and longitude to where you're at, and if somebody runs off with one, you can actually lock it, and it'll send the code, I think, back to Reconyx. So it's almost vandal-proof.
Yeah, and
or theft-proof.
If you've got them, register them too. I mean, I think that's one of their, if you've registered a camera under Louis Zen and Joe Blow calls in wanting to get the code to it because he forgot it, that's kind of a red flag to them. If it's
right,
they're expensive. I mean,
that's something I want to touch on here as well, because we've probably lost some viewers at this point that are saying, I can't afford this. That's ridiculous to spend that kind of money on it. And I can't say that I disagree with you. However, us in hunting, bow hunting, deer hunting, the whole gamut, squirrel hunting, squirrel land, This is our hobby. Myself at this point in time, I don't have any other hobbies. I was a huge boater, recreational boater for years and years and years. Spent a lot of money boating, having a boat, maintaining the boat, using it. Got into golf for a while, spent a lot of money golfing, went to Vegas to golf, all these things. So right now, this is my hobby. So, for guys that go out and spend money, maybe they like to go to the casino every now and again, or maybe they like to go to the tavern every now and again.
Sure.
And, on a Friday night, spend $50, $60 or whatever.
Sure.
I don't do that. I literally am kind of a homebody. When you buy your own farm and, there's plenty of stuff to do, you're totally content with spending your free time there.
Sure.
So that's the money that I'm spending is, my hobby money, I guess. And I think most of us have some sort of a budget each year of money that we're going to spend on hobbies.
Yeah.
And mine just happens to be hunting related.
Yeah. Well, I think that this podcast, we're not going to apologize for trying to have the best things.
Right.
Every one
we're
of us,
serious.
We've all started with that $50 camera and moving up in life, and that's just what we. To each is their own. There's other great cameras out there. Our experiences and what we found works great. And
I still got some Bushnell and Moultrie stuff that's you could probably buy it for $100, $150. It works. And it works. It works just fine.
Yep. And I think some of the other things, while we're on the topic of trail cameras and just the stuff that we're using, several years. It's been 10 years ago. I would go out this day and age. We've got like Stick and Pick. Lou, you've got some other ones, don't you?
Moultrie makes a trail pod that you can stick
up.
Yep.
So like 10 years ago, I'd go make my own.
Right.
I'm trying to get, because what I always found, and I think we've all been there, is you go to put a camera up and you say, man, I need one right here. And you start to looking around and there's not a tree close by, or it leans, or you've got to put sticks behind them and stuff. But I found that like the Stick and Picks have really come in handy to be able to just put a camera wherever you need it. If you need it on a food plot, if you need it on that scrape and there's not a tree right there, or a good trail, or whatever that is, that's just one of those tools that's allowed me in areas that I've got a lot of cameras. I use quite a bit of them on field edges in the summer months. If like an inside corner where they're naturally come out all the time, and you have some beans, I'll just stick it right there. But if I started looking for a tree, I'd have to get 10 yards back in the woods because everything's so small, or nothing good. But it just allows for a lot of versatility.
Oh, they're great.
And yet again, that's another one of these products that, a few years ago you were telling me that you had started using them. I'm like, I'll find a tree. I'm not going to spend money on that. And then the more I go with you and, running these cameras and just, got to move once, you just drive by, pull it out of the ground, move it, and I'm thinking, man, maybe that's not a bad idea. So needless to say, now I have 6 of them because I only have 6 of my cameras that I'm able to rig up, because you get a cheaper camera, they don't have the 1/4-20 thread on them. But going forward, every camera I buy will have the capability to be mounted on a Stick and Pick. And at some point, I will put them on a trail in the middle of the timber, because I can put them exactly where I want. I can put them at the exact height, at the exact angle, not using a bungee cord with twigs stuck behind it that every time you go to move it or whatever, it falls out, or you go to check the batteries or the card and the stick's falling out, and then it gets readjusted. And I will use a Stick and Pick on every single camera I ever have, because they are so quick. It's not a chore now, like, man, I need to go move some cameras around, which is, another topic we're going to talk about here shortly. Before, it was, going out, unstrapping them, and then hoping you could find a tree and hoping that you could get the right angle in the right tree, where now I just drive by on the buggy and grab them as I'm going by, go where I'm moving at next, shove them in the ground, readjust them, the tilt and the swivel, and you're ready to go. There's nothing to it. So, again, that is something that is money well spent, for sure.
And I used to be the guy that I've probably got still 8 or 10 of them at home back when I had a bunch of the the cutty back captures. Is I made these homemade stands out of some round galvanized pipe and welded up a little foot thing, and I could just basically do that same thing. But now with a lot of the cameras out there, they really don't match up with what the old ones were. So I went to a lot of the Stick and Picks, and there's a lot of guys I see that they'll stick them on a
T-post.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but the Stick and Pick just allows for a lot of versatility and being able to do that swivel and the tilt. And
so I had done that a few years ago. Of course, they were on some cameras that didn't have the 1/4-20 thread to begin with, but I had them in some areas that there were no trees to put them on, some open, like a four-corner section or something that if you put it on a tree, you were back behind tall grass or something. Just wasn't a good angle. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I fabricated something up, and I took a 2x8 and drilled 2 holes in it, put a U-bolt, 2 U-bolts on it, attached that to a T-post, and then the camera, it had, up in each corner, it had a slot to put a bungee or whatever, and I just took a screw and screwed it to that 2x8, and then I could go out and set the T-post, and then height-wise, I could kind of get it where I wanted. And it worked, but it's a pain in the neck, and especially when you go to move T-post, those things are not easy to move. They can be a real pain in the neck, and that's for sure, to try to get a T-post up out of the ground. So let's talk about moving our cameras, where we decide to put them at, and what our strategy is. I think this year I was a little late getting out. Last year I put them out really early. I think I was out into May, Memorial Day weekend. My birthday's May 27th. And I don't know if I just had an itch or I just bored and got them cleaned up, had the batteries on hand, and just went ahead and took them out and put them up.
Has Velvet even started?
No, he was scouting squirrels is what he was doing.
Yeah. No, and you'd be surprised. I mean, end of May, beginning of June, you're starting to see some growth, and I just wanted to try to, see if I could find a deer and see his entire antler growth. And so that's what I did, a little early. So this year, I think it was a little bit later. I think it was more late July. This year I was kind of in the mindset that I wanted to wait until the antlers were more formed, had an idea of who was what deer, what they may be, because I like to try to save my pictures of the ones that I want to keep an eye on. And I come out a little bit later this year. But I think July seems to be about the main time for a lot of people.
I've always tried to shoot for Louis, we got to get this chair fixed.
I'll tell you,
fall one of these days.
I've already decided that once bow season is over with, my Banks blind reclining chair that's in that blind, it is coming to Deerland HQ, and it is going to be my chair for
yours is fine
for the 8.5 months.
This thing's supposed to have 6 wheels on it. I think I got 4.5.
So this thing isn't near as comfortable as that Banks chair, I'm telling you.
Let's get a studio. Let's build a studio with fancy chairs.
Well, and that's
sound booth.
We'll get there at some point. So
heat.
Yeah, heat. So what were you talking about, Sellens? What do guys normally like to do?
As far as time.
I always try to shoot for sometime around 4th of July, middle of July, get them out. And, I think we all have, once you've been on a farm, or I think summertime good photos are hard to come by in Illinois. And I shouldn't say just Illinois, and I say that probably because there's a lot of states, some states that you're able to do salt licks, mineral licks, things like that. Missouri, there's certain counties you can. I think
sure.
Iowa, can you do it in Iowa?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So those are always really good places. I mean, Clark County, we can still do it over there right now. That's always a go-to. We've got 2 of those scattered around, and there's always a camera that goes there. And then I'm focusing on food. A lot of the bean fields, because there's so much foliage on the trees and stuff, it's hard to get any distance in the woods. So I use a lot of inside corners on bean fields, even some cornfields from time to time of where they're traveling.
You got a little bit of space between the corn and the timber.
Exactly.
It's a great spot to.
That's where I'll probably have 4 or 5 cameras on inside corners scattered around, and I always get great pictures. But man, once the velvet starts to drop, that all changes.
And I'm hoping too this year, I'll have some good clover. This is my first year of having a stand of clover, and that should be good, summertime nutrition for them. Yeah. And then the beans too. I mean, obviously they love them fresh growing beans. So
there's nothing better. Clover's probably second. Summertime velvet, clover's probably second, and beans would be first. Corn probably third.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of. I don't think
when that corn's putting them shoots off, makes it real tender.
There are certain times that they'll be eating on some corn a little bit, but it's not going to be a lot of times it's more of a cover or pass through area that they're just using the corn.
If you can put mineral out, that's number one. I mean, yeah. I'm a little bitter about Illinois not allowing us to put out mineral and stuff.
I'm fully on board to not allow it during hunting season. To not be able to bait.
We're not going to be hunting over it and baiting deer in, but allow us to put a trophy rock out so we can supplement them with some nutrients and get some good trail pictures.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer
trace
that
minerals in them.
The trace minerals can help, but also for the inventory to give you an idea of what you've got going on, especially when it comes to trying to manage a herd as best we can. I mean, none of us own big enough tracks to do it full on, but just so we have an idea going in, all right, what's it kind of looking like around here? I know myself. I mean, I'm always on the fence. Do I kill a doe? Do I not kill a doe? Do I need to kill 2 does? 2016, I didn't kill a deer. I killed a doe last year. I've killed one this year. But now I'm at a point now, I'm like, well, do I kill another one? And it would be better if I had a better idea of what our deer herd was like in September.
It's harder to get a good, do a trail cam survey. QDMA talks about doing that. A lot of places they say, we'll go put a corn pile out and run your camera for 2 weeks, and then you can kind of figure out what your buck to doe ratio is and how many deer you have, and I don't remember the specifics of doing that, but that's just something we can't do here. So a lot of it's observation in the field of kind of keeping a log of how many deer, how many bucks you have, how many does you think you have, and watching your cameras too. But it's harder to really get a good judge on. Or like myself, and
ratios. Just plaster your farm with cameras,
but you wouldn't need as many cameras if we could throw out some mineral. I mean, we used to be able to put out mineral in this state, and then CWD scared everybody up north, and then the great state decided they'd make a law for the entire state, which is the longest state from north to south in the country.
Yeah.
They decided they'd make the entire state follow the same rules as some counties.
Instead of doing like Missouri has done and had certain county bans and certain restrictions and stuff.
Some counties in northern Illinois is the reason why we don't.
Yep.
We can't put out our mineral.
And there's legislation, a study going on now. I think Don Higgins was, a big proponent behind that to kind of get that changed. And we thought maybe it was going to, and then it kind of did, but it didn't. And I don't want to start talking about that because I don't have the facts in front of me, and I don't want to be misquoted. But it's on the radar. There are people trying to get that changed for off-season supplemental feeding. So maybe,
why do I think that'll probably never happen in this state?
It's an uphill battle, and the problem that we've seen not even in this state but other states is I think it was Wisconsin or one of them northern states. There was an issue that all the hunting groups, the DNR, everybody, they were all on the same page, but the appointed members and the elected members of the guys that made the decision weren't, because there was probably some lobbyist or some other group that was not for it, and there was a financial restriction to it, so they can't get this done. I think one of them is Sunday hunting in Pennsylvania. They're working on that right now. There may even actually be
you can't hunt Sunday in Pennsylvania
other than foxes, crows, and coyotes.
Sure.
And to me, that's just insane. I understand where it come from.
It's a day of rest.
It is, but that should be a person's right to decide. I mean, there are people out there that are atheists or have different religions that observe different things, and you're throwing everybody into one group. And I've just always thought that it should be the person to decide if they want to go hunting. And with the world these days, everybody's schedules, I'm telling you, there's a lot of days where Sunday is the only time that I seem to get out and go, or let alone taking a kid. You have a 12 or 13-year-old kid that is in sports or whatever. A lot of Saturdays are booked, and Sundays are your only chance to get out into the field. So I think it's a draconian measure that needs to be re-looked at. But I know all the hunting groups and conservation groups and the DNR, they were all on board saying, yes, we need to change that, but getting it passed through the legislation and the DNR, most of your DNR is made up by appointed members, they've found some resistance in that.
So before we started this podcast a long time ago, before episode 1, we said we wouldn't talk about politics, religion, or CWD.
And we've now touched on all three of them in the last 3 minutes.
Yep.
Let's not go any further on that.
Let's get back to trail cameras.
So I was talking about that, and Tyler's squirming and like rising down his chair as I'm talking about the religion
I'm thinking,
thing.
Mike, all right, you're talking religion, politics. Louis, you mentioned CWD. Let's get back on topic.
What do you think about cellular game cameras?
Well, I was ready to take the leap. Last year that was the craze for everybody. Last year, maybe the year before, but last year was a big year for a lot of people. And I think around here, part of that is because Spartan come out with a U.S. Cellular camera, and where we're at, that's pretty much your only option. Mm-hmm. So there were lots of people that took that plunge, and I almost did, but I talked to you, Louie. You had a few of them, and I said, well, I'm going to wait and see what you think before I do it. And by the end of the season, you had told me that if I was going to spend that kind of money on a camera, to go buy a Reconyx instead.
Sure.
So I didn't buy a cell camera.
Sure.
Now, I still do think there are places for them. The other thing, too, is I went to a prepaid cell plan where I can't just add, the $5 line to it. So that was part of the reason I got out of it as well. But I do think they have their place, for sure.
They do. They just haven't been perfected. I jumped on board with cellular cameras and Spartan. And obviously we're throwing out all kinds of brands, and we're non-biased.
Yeah, we're not getting any money from anybody.
We're not getting paid. That's another something everybody should consider, is we're not getting free Reconyx cameras.
No.
and I still swear by them. I mean, I'm paying
big money for these.
God, I hope our wives don't listen.
That's the problem. But we talk about these Banks blinds and stuff like that. My shotgun last week. I mean,
we're paying.
How much did you have in that shotgun again?
Yeah, $343.
I mean, this is divorce material. Some of this money we're spending, but
it's because it
I jumped
works,
on board with the cellular idea because if I don't have to go check a camera and I can stick it on a scrape or a
heck of a theory
food plot, gee, many Christmas, and I can get the pictures on my phone almost in real time.
Cuddyback came out with that CuddyLink system this year,
and it's. Yeah,
I got me intrigued.
I had a client that bought it. He bought 4 cameras. At the time that he bought those, he pre-ordered the cell camera, but he ordered the 4 cameras, sent them to my house. Shane, if you ever listen to this, I'll throw you to the bus a little bit. But sent them to my house like, hey, can you put those out? So here I am trying to figure out how to set all these things up. I custom a little bit. They're a little you need to read the instructions on these. I will note that, but I took them out, put them around. You had to make sure that they were in range, and you basically can daisy chain them across the farm. Mm-hmm. I think it's up to 16 cameras. And basically I had one camera that was home that I had close to the road, and I could drive up, jump out, walk up the hill, check it, and I could get all 4 cameras. Now, they were low-res photos, but you still were able to see. And then it was probably August.
But there was still a high-res image on the card, right?
High-res images were on the
kind
actual
like a cell camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he got the cell unit showed up. Cell unit, that was another story of getting it set up. It was kind of a pain, I think. But what they're advertising is like $20 for. I think it's $20. I don't remember what.
Yeah, the Cuddy.
For the CuddyLink, it's $20 for up to 16 cameras to send. But what it does is you can change the batches, number of pictures, and how often it sends it. And so, like you don't
even have to be there. You can change the settings via laptop.
No, you have to go back to the unit to change them, I believe, because you actually had to get onto the cell unit, and I made that the home camera, and then I had 4 cameras scattered out, and he's added a 5th since. But
so that one cell camera will take the CuddyLink cameras, the non-cell cameras, and send those pictures?
So everything you made the like the 5 cameras that were actually the cameras, like the repeaters, and they would send them all to the home. Can't call it the home unit. It's not actually a camera. It's just a cell unit.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, it collects everything.
I see.
And then sends them out. So Shane would get pictures. It was always, I kind of chuckled at it because usually I'd wake up in the morning and have a whole bunch of pictures he'd sent me. But he would get batches of photos, and as the season got closer, we were able to change when he was getting those and how often he was getting them. So he was able to actually make some decisions on, and he lives in Texas, so he was able to make some decisions on a spur of the moment a little bit of, hey, I think, looking at the weather, looking at the earcast, watching what's going on his farm, of, hey, I'm going to come up and hunt.
Yeah.
So it worked good. I think there's still some things on it that need perfected maybe.
What kind of battery life are they getting out of those?
Not the greatest. I mean, you're getting the cameras, and that was one thing he noted, was that the cameras, when he would get kind of an update every day of saying, hey, camera, battery life here is good, good, and all of a sudden one of them would say, hey, batteries are getting iffy, and the next day they're dead.
Wow.
So it was a real short notice on that.
But you don't remember about how long?
I think the home cell unit, he got about 45 days, 60 days out of that.
That's not bad.
So if we're talking,
it's not bad, but if you don't have somebody close by to be able to go change.
Yeah, that can go change.
He's in Texas.
You're
He's not coming.
screwed.
He's not no plans to come back up, but he's wanting to see what he's on camera. So he emailed me today. Said, "Hey, if you're up there sometime, I think the batteries are getting low. Might take some batteries with you and throw in." So at some point, I need to stop by and
we were just talking about my cameras, and I said most of them I have on the field edges or whatnot, where I can drive the buggy right up to and check them. However, in this one spot, I've got two that are within 50, 60 yards of that, but they're in the timber that I don't check as often because I don't want to have to walk in through that timber.
Intrusion.
So that's kind of gotten me thinking, but I haven't even looked at like prices on them.
I think he's got about $1,100 into this for 4 cameras and a cell unit.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad.
But you can do it without the cell unit too, right? I mean,
I think they're only $400 or $500 without the cell unit. Just with the home base.
I want to say it was like between $700 and $800 for 4 cameras.
Yeah.
Which isn't extremely out of line.
I can tell you, if you stick a cellular camera in a bad spot that doesn't have service, you're going to go through $100 in batteries just figuring out what the heck's going on. I mean, there's frustrations like, I finally made the switch to a great quality camera that I could literally stick out for years and have no problem with, and then I went to cellular cameras with the Spartan, and those frustrations came back. Not because its capabilities, but just how fidgety it was with where you put it. This farm's nice, but it's only got good cell phone service in certain areas. So if you stuck that thing out and it only had 1 or 2 bars, sure it would send you that picture, but it would suck a lot of them.
It's no different than our cell phones sitting here.
Yeah.
I mean, switching from I'll go to 1X to 4G, and cycle through, and that just drains your battery in no time. And
it's no different.
Luckily on my farm, I mean, I've got pretty good cell service. I mean, I'm kind of up on a higher elevation there. But
another thing that you got to get used to is with the cellular camera, especially with that Spartan, and Spartan makes a good product. I'm not bashing it at all. It's just certain areas it's probably really good. This particular farm, it's not great unless I do have 1 or 2 spots. You got to set the megapixel resolution low. You got to set the size of the picture low, and you've got to have it in a good spot that has good coverage. But as far as what I do like about the app is if it sends you a picture and it looks like there's a good buck, or if a deer's standing there at 20 yards and it's a little bit blurry, you can request an HD picture and it'll send you that HD picture pretty soon after you request it. That's a pretty cool thing. You can adjust all the settings. If I want to do time lapse, I've got a camera up here on some brassicas and standing corn. If I want to figure out what's on there from midnight to or 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., I can set a time lapse pretty easy. I mean, the capabilities are there. It's just not perfected. It only takes – so if you set it for 2-picture burst or 3-picture burst, it sends you the last picture.
Oh, okay.
So that's a little bit frustrating, because if you go check the card, because it holds an SD card just like anything else. So if you pull that card out there just like a conventional camera, you look through the pictures – all of a sudden you've got pictures of deer, and in that picture that you got on your phone, you don't have anything, so it's a little bit, it doesn't give you the whole story just like every other. But
well, and right now, I can honestly probably be using one. It would come in handy. I'm after this one deer that I've been after all season, and he's frequented this one location, more often than not in daytime. And he's kind of got a pattern where he'll be there for 2 to 3 days, and then he'll be gone for 5 days, and he'll come back for a couple days.
Sure.
And I think that if I had a cell camera set up there, and right now I don't even know that he's alive, but if I could set something up, and then when he shows up, then I know, all right, now's the time, because there's a good chance that he's either going to come back out that evening or more likely that next morning he'll be back there again. Because, like a couple weeks ago, the 9th, 10th, and 11th, he was there all 3 days. Yeah. So usually it's always at least 2 days in a row, either an evening and then the next morning, or a couple mornings in a row. I think if I had a cell camera in that location, I would probably hunt that spot a little bit more, or especially now, feel a little bit better about it that, he's alive and he's back there. And
when I purchased my cell cameras, in my mind, which is always thinking about deer, I'm thinking this could change where I go on morning hunts and afternoon. And so I stuck them in strategic spots, and it never really changed. I never shot a deer because of those. I mean, I think the idea is awesome.
And that's what I'm saying
if
about.
If it was real time, it would be awesome. And maybe someday somebody will perfect it, but the frustrations that go into it are very similar to the frustrations that I faced with cameras 7 to 10 years ago. But in maybe 5 years from now, everyone's going to have them.
I don't have a cell camera, and I've got mixed emotions about them simply because of the fact that, I think in this day and age with the trail cameras, is all three of us in here are probably guilty of it, is we're already basing some of our hunting and whether or not how motivated we are about going hunting based on what our cameras are telling us. Do I have a good deer on camera? Do I have something
without a doubt,
I want to shoot?
There's an ethical factor here too.
It's almost like it's from that aspect. If you're only checking cameras every 10 days, Mike, you've got that anticipation a little bit of going out and checking that camera, see if that buck's back there or if he's been around. It keeps you going. And if you get the cell camera, to me, that almost takes. I mean, it's still hunting.
Yeah.
But to that point, it's almost dictating even more, or can, whether or not I don't know, nothing been on camera, I'm not going hunting today. Nothing showed up on my Spartan, so I'm going to skip today.
No matter what, it's old news. Like it maybe gives us more MRI for the future. It's always old news.
So
even with the cell phone
kind of delay
camera,
is there?
30, 40 seconds. If you've got 4G, 3G, and 3 or 4 bars, you can walk in front of that camera, and if you're standing pretty close, you're going to get that picture within 30 to 40 seconds.
Wow.
So it's still old news.
So
it's not like you're going to go jump in your tree and he's still going to be there, But
so that's what I was saying,
There's an ethical factor, though.
For me particularly, this year with this one particular deer and the pattern that he has been on, that I'm this close, that I know that is the one time that I really think I could benefit from it. I can't think of a time the last 4 years of owning my farm that I would have said, man, if I would have had a cell camera, would have known he's back, or I had him on a pattern. Now I know today is when he has returned, and he's probably going to be there tonight, tomorrow morning, or the morning after. I've never had that, but this year I do. So I do think I could do that. Instead, I haven't went and checked cameras. I was going to do it tomorrow, but now I'm talking myself out of it because of, again, gun season comes in Thursday. I want to keep the intrusion down, the pressure down. So I may wait until the weekend because I've already got my mind kind of made up of where I'm going to sit anyways at this point for gun season. But, once gun season wraps up and we get into the late season, it would be nice to know when he's back because, again, I know he used the same bedding area early season. This fall he's bedding in the same area. So I know even late season, I'm probably going to check him coming back by the same camera, going to bed, coming out to feed. So
my thoughts on the cellular cameras was my dream, my hopes were I'm going to catch a deer, making a scrape in the morning. I know where he's going to go bed, or I'm going to catch a deer on a food source in the morning. I'm going to know where he goes in beds. I'm going to get the picture at 9 a.m. I'm going to go hunt him at 2 p.m. He's going to come out, and I'm going to kill him. It just hasn't happened.
Right.
Has it happened with many other people? Probably. But just not me.
So we touched on this a little bit last episode as well, or one of the most recent episodes, and it's been a discussion on the Meat Eater podcast. And this last one that they just released, somebody had wrote in at the beginning of each podcast. They talk about people that write in with complaints or questions or whatever.
Sure.
And this was one of them. And they were talking about, the ethics behind it, the morals. And Steve Ranella is saying that, he believes that there will come a point where it will be regulated, just as it was with drones.
Mm-hmm.
When drones first come out, it was a new technology that wasn't a big deal until everybody had one. Mm-hmm. Right now with these cell cameras, it's
It'll
not
be
a
live.
huge deal.
We'll get live video.
And that'll happen. I mean, Lee and Tiff had it, on that feeder there for a long time. So it's there. It's just not able to be affordable to be mainstream yet. But these cell cameras are getting there. And Ranella's question or comment was, are they going to get proactive and get out in front of this and enact legislation before it becomes an issue? Because he used a reference on something, and I can't remember what it was, But there was another issue that they got out in front of, and they enacted legislation on it before it became widespread or wide used, and it was no big deal.
Yeah.
But if you wait until everybody's doing it and then you pull it away, then everybody's PO'd, because they've gotten used to being able to do it, and a lot of people have done it. Then you're going to get resistance. You're going to have less resistance if you get out and regulate it before it is commonplace, in the woods.
Sure.
So,
well, and I think I'm sure you guys have done it before. I noticed this year I had a hunt this year during bow season that I probably saw 20 deer that morning or evening, and I don't remember which one it was, but it stood out in my mind because I'm sitting there where I'm at, and I can watch one camera, and I just, it's like, okay, I watch these deer. I watch deer walk behind it. I watch deer walk beside it. We get the cell cameras, and I'm like you said, I'm sure there's people out there that have got, saw him on the food, went to bed, I'll go hunting, he comes right back out, kills him. But at the same time, if you put all of your faith into what you're getting most real time as you can from your Spartan or your cell camera, that
it's amazing.
And that's all you're basing it on, you're missing so much more out there. I mean,
and no matter what quality of camera you have, if it's not pointed in the exact right direction, and if you have it on a great funnel or pinch point, then that's fantastic. Well, I've got parts of my farm that I've tried putting cameras on and can never get pictures because they could go anywhere. There's 40 different trails or whatnot. But, guys like us, or me I'll speak for myself, that I get out there and I hunt usually 50 sits a year roughly. So I spend a lot of time.
Times.
Usually about 50.
52 last year.
I need to be a police officer.
Yeah. Well,
be a criminal.
You're living the dream.
Taking some vacation, and but literally
good for you, buddy.
Come October, I don't take vacation other than to deer hunt, so I use 17 days or 15 days or whatever it is I get total for hunting, and that's about it. But
you earned it.
You figure, gun season, there's 20 sits just in gun season, between first, second, and muzzleloader season. I try not to miss any of those. So then it's about –
You're counting 2 sits a day.
Yes, not 50 days, 50 sits. So, and then it's 25, 30 bow sits.
If you go in the morning and don't come out till dark, is that
that's
two sits or is that one sit?
That's 2 sits. That's a morning and an evening. Okay. I kind of break a day up into a morning and an evening. So, but we can get out there and see what's going on our farms, whereas somebody like Shane that lives in Texas doesn't have that capability, or somebody that, maybe has a lease where they don't live there and they get 7 days. They get a week to go hunt. That could be beneficial for them. But what I would tell people is never not go hunting because you don't have anything on camera. I've done it. I've let them get in my head and get me discouraged. And the more I go out there and sit, and especially if I sit in a spot where I know I'm probably not going to have an opportunity to shoot a bow, shoot an arrow at a deer, but it's a great scouting vantage point where I can see 200 yards in either direction. You're going to see a lot of deer. You're probably not going to kill them. But you do get remotivated, like last night. I knew where I was sitting that I probably wasn't going to have a chance at a deer, but then I had a shooter come out at last light that.
Here's a big debate, though, and I have the argument all the time with my buddies that come to the farm and say, oh, man, there's got to be a big buck running around. There's got to be a big buck. What percentage? I mean, we run them religiously. I look at thousands of trail pictures a year, thousands. So do you on 40 acres, and so do you on, decent amount of ground. Wouldn't you say that we know 95% of the stuff that's going on, or is it even more? I think that
I think 95% of the deer that have been on your property at one time or another. But actually, what's going on based on the cameras? I think really, I think.
But what's going on is, we're trying to find a mature deer, right?
Right.
So, it's great to know how many does and how many 2-year-olds and stuff like that's running through your farm. We check cameras not just to find a big buck. It's just cool to see deer.
Yeah, I save buck pictures of any deer that I can discern something. So, like this year, I shot that 7-year-old buck. I go back 4 years. I knew what deer he was. You start young.
Have you? You run a ton of cameras on a small acreage,
right?
Relatively small. In how many years you've ran cameras, has there been many surprise deer that show up? I mean, we got to put more credit into these cameras too.
You do. I had a camera this year. It was in the middle of our farm, and it's down in the woods. I mean, it's just right smack dab in the middle. It's on a salt lick, and it's in Missouri, just to clarify for everybody. And I've got a pile of other cameras around and literally this, I think 2 times, this buck comes in. He's probably a mid-50s 10-point. Comes in, get a picture, leaves, gone. Neighbors never got pictures of him. Somebody should have got a picture of him somewhere else on that farm, neighboring farm, something. Nobody got him, but 2 times he came to that camera, to that salt lick, and left. Never got him on one other camera anywhere else. And I showed pictures to the neighbors. They're like, we've never seen that deer.
Tells me he's living within 100 yards of that camera, and he just doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
You got him. Why haven't you killed him?
Because I think he's one of those deer that just
He came in there for one day.
No, it was different days. It
Okay.
was early. It was right when velvet came off, and then maybe another week or 10 days later.
Well, they'll shift their range pretty good. They can, anyways. Not always. They can shift their range. I mean, I had that happen with one deer. I had this wide 10 with a flyer coming off his left G3 that I had him on the target. I thought, man, this buck is regular enough. Even had him hard-horned up through the very beginning of October. I mean, into August, all the way through September, beginning of October, and I thought, all right, this deer, I can get on him. He's going to be one of the better ones to get on. Mm-hmm. Haven't seen him since the beginning of October.
This year.
Well, I think what you're getting at, Louis, is you would think that with the number of cameras that we all run on our properties, that we should know the deer that are there. We should know what's going on. But at the same time, it puzzles me a lot of times of, Mike, you've probably had this, is all of a sudden the camera in the middle of the farm, this deer shows up on, it's the only camera you get him on, and you would think based on the way a lot of the other deer travel through the farm that you should have got him on that camera or this camera or that one over there.
I've not had it. I've not had it here.
Mike, the story you told, I think, of the deer you killed in, was that 15?
2015, yeah.
15. I mean, you can probably rattle off the times and dates of all the trail cam photos right now, but you're like, he came onto the farm the one time he ever showed up.
Had him on 4 cameras. Had never seen the deer in my life, October 9th, and he come through a spot that I would have never guessed a mature deer would ever come through, let alone October 9th. But, yeah, he did. I can track him all the way up until he walked right out into the food plot to where I shot him at. But I've had other deer that just show up on one camera. Overall, I think other than the 3 weeks of the hot rut, where you're going to get some random deer, but I didn't really even see a lot of mature deer that I had no idea who they were this year. Most of them, well, like the deer that I shot, had been familiar with him since 2015, but nobody had seen him in a year. No pictures this year, maybe 1 or 2 last year. I did find an October one and a December one of him last year that I had, but nobody.
2018, he's been MIA, and then all of a sudden he just shows up, and there he is.
Yep, and I had a picture of him. It was a little bit blurry picture, but at 6:03 that morning, the morning that I killed him, he was walking into that food plot. And
are you sure on that time?
I am sure on it.
Was this before daylight savings or after?
This was the day before.
Is that Eastern or Central time?
Yeah.
Too?
So this would have been that Saturday.
You remember
Saturday
stuff.
before.
It's awesome.
And
it's awesome.
But he walked in and into that food plot, and I have to think that there's doe bedding all around that. That's why it's been a productive area. That I have to think that he walked in there at 6:03. Found that hot doe at some point that morning, and then he had her locked down in that little draw between the 2 fields, and they had been there all day long. No pictures of him before that, obviously none after because I shot him. But so that can happen. And most of the deer that show up, I mean, I recognize them. Maybe it's as a 2-year-old. The deer I'm after this year, I started following as a 2-year-old.
So another big debate that I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about is, how would we interpret, or how would our love for hunting change if we didn't have trail cameras? Would it be more suspenseful? Would there be more mystery to it? Would it change the age structure of the deer we shoot?
Without a doubt.
That's what I was just thinking. I mean,
that's a huge debate that I'm torn all the time. Buddies are like, man, you run too many cameras and you only go in certain spots because of what a camera told you, where the fundamental side of me says, You know what? Would hunting mean more to me if I didn't have cameras and I didn't know, if I didn't have names for every freaking buck on the farm? You know what I'm saying?
So here's what I think is with the cameras, I think we can all sit here and say that we're, at least going after 4-year-old deer. I know, Louis, on your home farm, you're kind of wanting to push that towards 5, but it's at least 4-year-old deer is what we're after. Now, I believe that if we didn't have cameras where we would get these random pictures of these big mature deer in the middle of the night or whenever it was, and otherwise we wouldn't even know that they're around, we're going to be killing a lot more 3-year-old deer because those are the biggest deer we're seeing from the field on a regular basis, I think. Now, maybe when somebody gets a lot more experience under their belt, then that would change. I also believe a guy like me that is self-learning, trying to teach himself certain things, that the cameras have played a big part in that. It does hurt my woodsmanship skills. It does hurt, other capabilities that I have because I'm relying on some of this technology. However, I wouldn't change it at this point.
I think a lot of Louis touched on just like the big thing was the age structure. And I think that, the cameras, if we probably look back and we go back in time to when people got more focused on age, there's probably a correlation in there somehow of cameras and age and management and how we've evolved over time. Is a lot of that's the technology and the cameras and doing that.
It gives us those capabilities to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think it was probably a lot more suspenseful when we didn't have cameras because we never knew what was going to come out. We didn't know if it was a 140, a 180, a 120, a 110. I mean,
you shot the 120 thinking he was 160. Yeah,
but the only way you had inventory of what was on your farm or to know what was around was because you went and sat on and hunted and you saw what you saw with your own eyes and what people that are hunting with you and you're sharing notes and this neighbor says I saw that, and even back to that day and age you probably didn't have a whole lot of QDMA co-ops and that sort of a thing.
So
it's definitely evolved a lot into, I saw Jeff Probst on a Huntera little video one time. He's kind of like, shoot what makes you happy,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the. Not everybody out there runs cameras.
So
I mean, it's some people just go hunt the hunt and whatever looks good to them is what they shoot. But that's the cameras have definitely changed the game and the mindset of what we're all doing.
It's been the most, I'd say, in the last 25 years, it's been the most transcending
advancement in technology.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's
other than the bow technology's come a long ways too. The speed and the kinetic energy that these compound bows are able to produce.
Absolutely.
But
it's the thing that people talk about the most, I think. And if you're hunting a deer, and if you're serious about it, you're talking about cameras. What are you running? What SD card?
Yeah,
what lithium battery? Where are you buying this? Where are you getting this? What are you spending?
Buddies get around and pull their phone out and look at this deer I got on camera. Look at that deer I got on camera. I mean, it's part of it. And I always say is, I kind of think of Christmas as a kid and growing up and stuff. But this is kind of like, to me, trail cameras is almost like Christmas as an adult.
It is, and I tell people
because you never, regardless, Louis. I mean, I know this year you've kind of said, I've got a lot of up and covered deer. I don't have one particular I really want to shoot right now. But you're still going out and checking those cameras. You're still going out and hunting because he's liable to show up, and there's always that anticipation every time.
That's right.
You got to get back, get the cards in, and start looking at them.
That's right.
And like I've said before, for me, it's kind of a hobby, just to run the cameras and see what's out there. But, I guess I should clarify as well that I run all these cameras, and I don't check them all the time, as I stated earlier. I haven't let them dictate if I'm going to hunt or where I'm going to hunt. As I've said, I've got 2 stand locations and 2 blind locations, and they each have a predominant wind that is better than the other. So the wind essentially dictates where I'm going to hunt at. And I'm usually going to hunt unless I have something pressing going on that I can't, or the weather is just not conducive for deer movement. None of my pictures that I have gotten so far have helped me kill a deer. Like I said, the deer that I killed this year hadn't had a picture of him. But in years past, I had gotten some pictures of deer using that plot that time of year. However, I seen it more with my own eyes because I had moved from that plot to a quote-unquote rut stand, 200 yards away, and then I started watching all the deer October 27th and November 3rd coming in and out of that plot. And so this year I said, I'm not leaving this place until, the first week of November or so, and I didn't. I stuck with it. But that wasn't necessarily trail cameras. That was more of me watching deer movement during the rut and cruising and stuff. This deer I'm after right now, it has kind of helped, that I know that he's around. But right now, I don't know that he's alive. I haven't had a picture of him in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and so, and I think that's also part of the reason why I'm not going to check cameras before opening day of second season is because if I go check them and there's nothing on there, it's going to be hard for my mind not to tell me, all right, well, this is going to suck. There's going to be no deer out. Because I almost had that last night because I wasn't thinking no big deer were around, and then all of a sudden, last light, here comes a big deer out. So I like having that not knowing of what's around.
It was after first gun season, Mike. I think there goes that chair again. Going to throw me out of it. It was after first gun season. You were kind of down in the dumps a little bit, just based on the amount of shooting, assuming that more than likely of where that deer you've been after was hanging out, where he was using, that more than likely the neighbor had killed him.
Right.
And you had basically just completely changed and said, well, I got to find a new target deer, and kind of a little bit maybe lowered your standards to a certain.
Well, yeah, I'd opened up more possibilities.
You had, assuming that deer was dead. But then, I sent a message to neighbors and said, hey, just see what they killed. And I think they killed one smaller buck, and that was it. So
yeah, I was hoping that this deer wasn't what they were considering just a little decent 8-pointer.
No.
No.
And I kind of chuckled at that because it was just like all of a sudden you just kind of flipped again. You're like, all right, well, maybe that deer is still around, and you're back to him again. But don't. I know the juries talk about most recent information. That's good to have, but don't give up faith that maybe a deer, just because you haven't had him on camera for a day or two or a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever that is, don't assume that just because you haven't had him that he's not still alive somewhere.
Well, and again, this deer has been an anomaly for me, on a small tract of land. It's not very often you get to somewhat get a pattern on a mature deer, especially one that you've got 4 years of history with, passing it as a 2-year-old. So I have been a little bit more excited about this particular deer because for the first time in my life, I felt like there is a good chance, that I may see this deer. He has been regular, whereas in years past, I will have some deer that will become regular for 2 or 3 days, and then you may not see them again for 2 or 3 months or something. They're just, or they're showing up at midnight. But this deer was showing up daylight from the beginning of October, continually, and so it had me excited. And just with my history with him, I really did want to have a chance at him, and I still may. We don't know. He's probably still alive. We went through most of the options in the area, and I don't think that he's traveling too much. He seems to be kind of a homebody. But we do have another good deer around that I think might have been the one that I saw the other night. I couldn't swear by it. So, and that's another thing. This is my first year going into the fall with food plots and standing beans.
And that new shotgun.
And a new blind. So there's still a little bit of an unknown for me, as most people have for the rut where you don't know what's going to show up. When I hunted last night, still part of me thought, we just got 6 or 8 inches of snow, brutal winds, blizzard-like conditions. These deer are going to have to be hungry, and there's not a whole lot of options in the area. So I felt like maybe there's a chance they could show up and eat these beans that are standing here. And granted, it's the first year that I've done it, so it may take a little while before more of the deer figure it out. But
yeah, and I think as we were talking to, or we're going to touch on, is just kind of where you put your cameras and different times of the year, and if you're on summer food sources or mineral licks, if you can do them. A lot of guys, when rut's starting, when the velvet comes off, things kind of change. The deer change patterns. There's certain times of the year, mid-October, late October, scrapes are great areas to get a good inventory of what deer are there. A lot of times your scrape activity is more nighttime stuff. Yeah. I found some, you'll find some internal scrapes inside the woods and stuff, or that'll still get a lot of daytime.
But a lot of transition, from habitat transition, going from a field edge to a timber, or field to CRP, and then maybe even from the CRP to the timber. Yeah. A lot of those you'll find there. And I've also noticed a lot of deer just checking the scrape in daylight, but maybe not actually physically working it. And they'll just kind of run by, sniff it around a little bit, and then move on. But that is something that, mid to late October when those scrapes really get going, if you see a fresh one pop up, I know I started doing it. I started moving cameras and putting them on it, and it paid off.
Yeah, those trail pods are cool, too, because you can stick them right
exactly where you want
it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you can stick them out in the field towards the scrape. You don't have to stick them in the timber out towards the field. You can stick them right where you want them, and deer don't seem to mind it.
Yep.
I'll even find a lot of times during October, I'll throw an extra camera in my backpack when I'm walking in.
Good idea.
If there's a fresh scrape that showed up I didn't know about, I'll throw it up on there. And but I think as the season goes on, the rut slows down and the deer are transitioning to food focus. I think a lot of times, I don't know how you guys do it, but I try to focus on is get them on the food source or get between the bedding and the food source on a good travel corridor in there, and then just and really, because if your focus this time of the year is food and that's what you're hunting, is get them on the plots. Maybe you put on a plot watch or something like that, time lapse, so you can really tell when the deer are using it.
Yep.
And that's a good way, in my opinion, to really pattern those deer on your food sources that you put in, so you can make a.
I did kill that deer last year. That buck I called Stubbs. He was the oldest deer on the farm. He was 6.5, but I killed him because of trail cameras. There's no doubt. And here's why. It wasn't because I knew he was there. It was actually because, judging by the trail camera pictures and the observation, I knew he was coming to those beans with a south wind. He was bedded north of there. The deer would enter the beans. He could lay right where he was, and he could smell what was in the plot. I caught him on a south wind on January 14th. I'd had 8 encounters with that deer, and finally caught up with him the last day of season. The stories, I could tell you the story. It'd take a while. We've spent a lot of time. You wouldn't believe it, but I killed him on the last day of bow season last year on a south wind. Worst wind you could hunt this stand. Finally caught him because I'd seen him twice. I went back in the, is it Wonderground?
Yep.
You can look back and see what the weather was 30 days ago.
Which is something that Mark Drury has
3
done
years
a lot,
ago.
and I do it too.
I seen him twice, and then I checked the cameras, and he'd only be on those beans certain days, and then I went back and I time dated the cameras as well as my observations and figured out that deer's only coming to them beans on a south wind.
Yep.
And January 14th of 2018, this year, he came out and I killed him.
And that's something, this deer that I've been after, that I've thought about doing. I thought, a south wind was maybe when he was only coming, but then I got to thinking I had a couple encounters with him on a north wind. However, I did notice on the south winds he's coming from a little bit different angle.
Right.
So I think he's shifting his bedding, even only just 100 yards to the east with a south wind. But I think what I will do once the season is wrapped up, I will go back and study that and compare the historical weather information to the pictures and try to gain some knowledge from that. Now, again, my stand locations are picked out. I'm not moving anything. So, I'm going to hunt where I'm going to hunt based on the wind. But
it might change some things. You might reconsider certain spots where, yeah, man, he was coming through there with a northeast. I wonder what's up with that. And you might switch some things up.
And that may still happen with this late season. We'll see if he shows back up. And once we get through muzzleloader season, if I've still got a tag, then I will try to get a game plan for that last 5 weeks or so of the season.
And sometimes it makes you hunt a spot that might be marginal wind-wise.
Oh, yes.
But it's, okay, I'll hunt there with a north wind. The wind's perfect with the north, but he ain't going to be there.
Right.
Or I can hunt it with a south, and he's probably going to be there, and maybe I'm going to get picked off. But it's like, which reward? It's risk reward. Which one? You want to kill that deer, so you might as well go for broke. You got to be. I think we get too caught up in wind direction and thermals and stuff like this when we just need to figure out, go back and look at the data that we've collected with these trail cameras that we just talked about, and just go in there and try to kill him. If it doesn't work, you know what? You tried.
Yeah.
I'd rather.
And again, I don't think
I'd rather see what happened than wonder if I would have been in there.
With this particular deer, I won't get that aggressive with him. If it was a stand site that I just thought that, it's a good chance of mature buck movement, But with him, I know he has betted on me. I know he is there. So I don't want to do anything more than I have to that could potentially run him off of there.
Right.
He did pick me out of the tree on November 3rd, the morning that I shot my deer, that other deer. And
Point in case right there about trail cameras of don't not hunt because of what you don't see.
Right.
That deer gone for a year.
Yep.
And then that day you kill him.
So you think that buck that spotted you in the tree is not going to come back there for a while?
Well, no. So that's what I was going to say. So the morning of November 3rd, he spotted me. He was getting close to my wind. And, I know we talk about stuff. I do use an ozonics. I do believe that it helps. We can argue, nothing is foolproof, but I do believe that it does help me. And maybe they notice something is up, and maybe they turn around and go the other way, but they're not going to bust like they normally would.
I think they run 100 yards instead of quarter mile.
And this one ran 30 yards,
right.
But I'm not sure that he even got to my wind. He got close to it. But again, we looked at each other like the same time. We both had that, deer in the headlights look when we looked at each other. And I just stayed still, and he kind of looked at me a little bit, turned around, took a couple steps, bounded off for 25, 30 yards, and then just walked away. So initially, that morning, I was down, and I wasn't going to hunt that night. Thankfully, I did with zero expectations. We talk about trail cameras and expectations. I went to that blind with no expectations. I almost overslept. I took a nap, didn't want to get up, wasn't going to go. Last minute, decided I'm going to, got out late, killed the biggest deer of my life. So you have to get out there regardless of what your trail cameras say. However, back to this other deer. Pegs me out of the tree November 3rd.
Like blew at you or what? I mean, tell me.
No, I go to get in my pocket to check my phone, and as my head is going down, I look just out over my tip of my nose, and he's 19 yards looking right at me. He had slipped through. I knew, that was a trail he would use, but it was so quiet, it was so wet in there that I did not hear a single thing. And even when he bounded off, you couldn't hear nothing. I mean, it made no noise. So, again, he caught the movement, and when you're a guy of my stature hanging off the side of an oak tree, and I was skylined, it was kind of at the edge where I had nothing behind me. There was some hedge branches and stuff behind me, but still this big old blob hanging off the side of a tree. He knew something was up, so I just froze. I didn't move, and he just turned around, like I said, took a couple steps. He hung around for 5-10 seconds maybe, which seems like an eternity, in that type of situation. That's a long time for a deer to hang around. 5 seconds. Normally it's a split second and they're gone.
Yeah.
But I was down. I thought, well, I've blown it. He's going to be, on the other side of the county. He ain't coming back around here. And then that was the 3rd. And then November 9th, that Saturday morning, we had some snow that had come in. And at 9:30 something that morning, here he is coming from the field this time.
He came back.
And walked right by that camera that I had into that opening. He walked right by where he was standing at when that camera took the picture, was exactly where I was hoping a deer would stand when I was sitting there, out into the edge of the field. So there he was back. And then he was on the farm the 9th, 10th, and the 11th, So
this is a better question for a biologist, and it's a further episode, but I wonder what a deer's memory bank is when they're 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. I mean, that deer, if his memory was that strong of seeing movement up in that tree and he felt a little uneasy about it, you would think he'd never come back.
It's kind of like that old doe.
But he didn't smell you, right?
I don't think so.
He just saw somebody he didn't like. Just think if he would have smelled you, saw you, maybe you shot at him, would his memory be different and maybe he doesn't come back at all? Who knows?
I start to wonder, It's
kind of like that old doe that walks out in a food plot that she picked you off out of that tree, and every time she comes out, she looks up at it.
Those old monarchs are. They look up
20
at that.
years old. They look at it whether it's
yeah.
April or October.
So I think he gets overwhelmed with thoughts of maybe
love making and stuff like that. So that's something else with this deer in particular. Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but him as a 2-year-old in 2015, I had him at 7 yards in front of me, perfect shot on him. And then picked him up a bunch on camera in 15, 16, 17, and 18. This is 4 years in a row that this deer has been on the farm. So I think maybe part of it is he feels more comfortable around there. I mean, he's just where he's always been.
Do you remember what time you passed him?
You need to kill that deer so we don't have to hear about him again.
I've got it.
Louis, that will be a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, no,
if
that'll
he kills
be
that deer.
That'll be
That story.
This has been at least 2.
We're just gonna do
that'll be a Mike's
monologue.
Take, a Mike's Take
Trail
episode
cameras.
is what that one will be. I'll do that one solo. But
we're gonna give you
Are
5
trail
minutes.
cameras good for the sport or bad? I think.
No, for me, I think they're a great tool. It allows me to know what's going on, and not even just deer. I'll tell you what, I know locations where I've got a ton of
Coyotes,
raccoons,
bobcats,
a lot of rabbits coming in and out.
Maybe
Do you
a
ever set
trespasser?
any cameras for squirrels?
You don't have to set them for squirrels. I mean, they're going to find your camera, I can promise you. But I'm not saying that when it comes time to go squirrel hunting that I don't remember these spots where there are squirrels for days.
What's a big male squirrel? Is it a bull?
Yeah, I think so.
You got any big bulls picked out?
Yeah, there's some big ones running around, but I want to try to get
big
one of
nuts?
these little grays, and they say they're
You know
tender.
what? Now that we're on squirrels, I was on a
Can
property.
a squirrel smell?
No,
I was on a property in Knox County, around DeLong, and I'm walking through the woods, taking pictures, and I look over and I thought, sounds like a squirrel, and I look, I'm like, that thing's black. I walked around that far, I bet I saw half a dozen black squirrels.
Yep.
Black.
I know there's been some towns, I think Farmington, some other towns that have them in town, but I've never, I guess, really heard of anybody or seen them. I've not seen any in the wild myself of black squirrels out.
Is that the ultimate trophy?
A black
could
squirrel?
be. Yeah, I don't know.
Albino?
I don't know. Well, I haven't seen one of those either. One other thing on the trail cameras that I wanted to bring up while we were talking about it, has anybody had any experience with like the Plot Watcher Pro?
I've never ran a Plot Washer Pro.
No.
I've thought
Seems
about
like
them.
most cameras now have the time
Time
lapse.
lapse.
Well, no, they do.
Which I don't have a lot of experience running time lapse. I had a Cuddy-back Attack that they had the software with it, and I would stick it up high. But the problem is, if that deer is out there,
You're not going to see what he is.
60 yards, you don't even know what it is.
No,
you just
no.
know that there's numbers in the field.
So I think, with the Plot Watcher Pro, I think that's something that is a little bit official. That they've got a software that greatly reduces battery consumption, memory storage, and the only downside to them is it's only daylight. They only have the capabilities to take daylight photos. But I think if a guy had a big area that he wanted to just put on Plot Watch all day long,
Sure.
because sometimes we forget that deer do eat all day long, every 3 to 4 hours or so. That they may be out in those plots, in the middle of the day as well. I don't know. I've thought about them. I just haven't decided to spend the money on it yet.
Man, it's always a tough pill to swallow when you're buying a camera,
Or anything,
I've learned that, you get what you pay for with most things in life. Although I think you can find some good deals out there. Trail cameras, I think they're right. I think that saying is.
You do get what you pay for, I think.
No, and again, I think
I'm just warning you, any of our listeners, if you buy Reconyx, I apologize. I apologize to you and your wife and your checking account.
Yeah.
You won't want to go buy anything else once you start running one.
They're just awesome.
But again, I mean, if you go into buying a cheaper camera, but knowing you're going to get what you pay for, like I did, but I needed a quantity to try to learn this farm that I, had never walked when I bought it, let alone knowing anything about it.
Mike, think about it. 50-yard flash range.
No, and I understand that, but if you're trying to cover a large area to learn how the deer use your
you gotta
farm,
saturate it.
if you need 10 cameras, most people can't afford to go spend $5,000 on cameras, so buy something affordable, but just realize you're going to have a lot of blurry pictures. You're probably going to have one of your, 5 or 6 cameras, go out on you within a couple years. But you are going to learn where deer are moving, and if it's a buck or a doe. And so, I mean, I've got some fantastic pictures.
So how many batteries have you went through just because there was even just a limb dangling down in front of it with movement or a foxtail?
I've had fantastic luck. I don't use lithium batteries.
But you're lucky with the with Reconyx, they don't even.
What I've noticed,
they don't
Reconyx,
even take pictures of that stuff.
If you get a picture and you go, they took a blank picture, it's probably not a blank picture. Start zooming in and looking around. There's probably a little bird somewhere.
It's thermal.
Or a squirrel or a rabbit. You've just got to find it.
Most of them are on movement. And I think Reconyx is on thermal. It's got to be a heat. It's got to be something in front of it that's got a little bit of heat.
And a lot of them are that way, actually, and that's why you can set the sensitivity to them, high, medium, low.
Unless there's foxtail or a limb.
So here's the thing. I buy my batteries on eBay. They're usually like $35 for 100 of them.
The sun.
And I will put a fresh set of batteries in a camera in July and never change them, through January.
You've had great luck.
And that's just I've had one Bushnell this year I had to replace, but I had it on field scan mode where it was taking 3,000 or 4,000 pictures a week. And so after a couple months, I did have to replace those. But on my other regular old cameras, they've still got half or two-thirds battery left. They've been out there since beginning of July. So
I think those Hyperfires, Louis, they've got their claim to fame on them now is 2-year battery life for 40,000 pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but that is one thing on the Reconyx, I think, is they do stress to run some little batteries.
Run the lithium.
Oh yeah, you got to. But Mike, sounds like you've had great luck.
I haven't. Like I said, I've got
and
4.
I've set way too many cameras up where the sun's setting or the sun's coming up or there's you weed eat everything and then all of a sudden this weed hops over and
you missed one and it
thing
shows up the next day.
There's $20 of lithiums down the drain.
Yeah, so that's why I don't. I buy cheap Duracell. They're not cheap. They're Duracell batteries on eBay, but they're $35 for 100 batteries. It's pretty cheap. And that essentially will get most of my cameras up and going. That'll fill them all up. So I've had great luck. I just want people to know that there are other options that are out there. Just figure out what it is you're looking to do and realize you are going to get what you pay for, but you don't have to spend the money. But when you get to a point where you've got your farm figured out and you've got some great camera locations that you think some good deer are moving through, it is worth it to put a good camera on that spot.
Absolutely. And you don't think any scumbag lowlifes are going to come steal them? Hang them up.
And that's the thing, yeah. Put them, cable them up, put them in a lockbox, put them high.
I cabled one last year.
You will be very upset if Reconyx
I cabled
disappears.
one 2 years ago and it got stolen.
So a lot of guys, what they're doing now is they're putting them about 2 climbing sticks high and pointing them down. So if someone is coming through, they either got to find a way to shimmy the tree or have sticks with them.
So here's the reason I bought nice cameras is because I've got just as many bad cameras that are guarding my good cameras.
Right.
Because I don't trust people anymore.
No, and you can't. I've been
some decoys.
I've been a cop for 15 years. I understand what goes on out there. And again, that is an inherent risk that, any time that you do have something, there is somebody out there looking to find an easy way out and take something that is not theirs.
I think every camera at some point, most of the ones I have now are GPS tracked. You get the latitude, longitude, GPS trackers. And then I think every camera we run in 5 more years is most likely going to be tied to our cell phone service or our satellite service or something where we can monitor,
what's going on, where they're
right,
at.
Yep.
Right.
Like I think a lot of the XR6s, they've got passcode. So if you don't know the passcode, you
can't use it.
You can't. They are basically might as well throw it in the garbage because you're not going to get it to work.
Yep.
You might never get it back, but whoever stole it,
they're not going to be able to use it.
Not going to be able to use it.
Yeah. So, and once that gets out there, people will be less apt to take them. But you'd be surprised by the number of people that still steal people's cell phones, knowing that they can't even get in it, let alone ever use it. Something. They just steal. That's, don't become a cop for a living if you want to still see the good in everybody,
right.
Because you have to see so much bad. There's still a lot of great people out there, but people will do things that you just can't put logic into.
Right.
So that's going to wrap it up for today's episode on trail cameras. I think, we kind of dove into this pretty deep. And it is something that a lot of us, or both of us, or all three of us have a lot of experience in.
Anybody else got anything to add about it?
I'm sitting here watching.
To our listeners,
I think we need to talk about.
I'm sitting here watching both of you guys, giving me the stop, shut up, and we got to end this thing. So that's what I'm doing.
I'll end on this. That anybody's listening, if you're running more trail cameras per acre than what Mike is, I would please comment. Let us know. I'd like to hear what your. If anybody's running more than 1 camera per 2 acres,
we could do a 2-part series on cameras.
No, there's still more that we could touch on, and that will happen because we will run out of things to talk about at some point in topics. We'll have to come back
a year
to
from
stuff
now
we've
we'll have
talked about.
something else that we're. That's what's cool about this sport.
And that's the thing with my cameras. As they die off and quit working, I'm not going to replace them with cheap cameras. So in all honesty, there will come a day where I will have 8 cameras on 40 acres.
That's right.
And that's just, that's way too much. You talk to people and they say you need 1 camera per 40 acres.
Right.
Well, the way my farm lays out, the way, I don't hunt certain parts of it, I need those types of cameras to be able to cover it all, because you'd be surprised the number of cameras that don't get a deer on it, or don't get a certain deer on it. So I'm not going to change that, and I found that works well on my farm for me and the objectives that I'm trying to attain. And that's the thing with our listeners, we're all going to have different objectives. So find what your objective is and find the best way to attain it.
And tune in next week for more updates on the mule deer buck. We'll have another.
Are you going to kill that deer or what?
We're going to have another 30-minute saga story on it.
Here's my vision: a trail camera, a drone. Drone flies over the trail camera. Trail camera sends a Bluetooth signal to the drone, transfers your pictures from the trail camera up to the drone. Drone brings the SD card back, sets it wherever you need it to. You pull the SD card out and you check it.
All right. I think somebody needs to cut Louis off. He's not making any sense anymore.
But
in talking about drones, the one great use I found.
Did you hear what I said?
No.
I mean, I think it's a genius idea.
Okay.
It's Bluetooth.
The one great idea that I thought,
and Mike's worried about running out of content to talk about
for a drone. Yeah, let's talk about that idea. Is a couple years ago, in an all-day sit in a rut, Tyler had his drone out, a couple months before, taking pictures of the farm, and I'm sitting there and I had forgot to pack a lunch and I was hungry. So I texted him. I said, "Is there any way that you could take that drone and tie off a ham sandwich to it and just fly it out and come out to me and land it?"
Yeah.
He said it didn't have the payload capacity, but I think that's a genius idea right there. You could deliver food. He could have pulled up to my house, sent me out a Subway sandwich right to where I was at,
sure.
and I'd have been fine. But
sure.
He wouldn't try it. So, again,
You could also hover that drone over a trail camera and transfer the photos from the trail camera to the drone and bring it back.
Yeah. Bring the SD card back.
The technology is there.
But don't you think that it would be just as intrusive just to drive a buggy out and do it?
No,
instead
I don't
of that?
think so.
Yeah.
I don't think
so.
the deer like
that,
those drones.
That drone
very
is
well.
probably 10 times more intrusive than
my
that.
gosh,
than your
they
buggy.
don't like
Something
those
from
drones.
the sky? You think so?
Oh, I know so.
What if you could hover 1,000 feet above it?
Well, Bluetooth has a
legally,
12-foot capability or something.
You can't go over 400 feet with the drone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got to have a pilot's license now. So
sure.
Well, that's
we're getting way down a rabbit hole.
I believe you.
we're getting way down a rabbit hole here, guys. All right. So final call. All in, all done. Anyone else have anything?
Squirrel in.
I already said it. First 15 minutes of the episode.
Squirrel cam.
I am hoping. My goal is to go kill Mongo or the mule deer buck Thursday or Friday, to go squirrel hunting Saturday and Sunday, get some fresh squirrel.
Sure.
We're going to fry it up here at Deerland HQ next week
sure.
with some turkey breasts, if Tyler remembers to thaw them out. And that's my agenda. How it works out, I don't know.
When is the squirrel rut, and when can we go? When can we start hanging cameras over a squirrel nest?
Well,
when's the inaugural annual squirrel hunt?
It'll be right after bow season ends. You get to February 22nd or 20th or something like that.
Whoa.
To squirrel hunt now.
So if you tag out on Thursday morning, we can squirrel hunt Thursday night.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's either the end of bow season or when I am out of buck tags, which I'm hoping is Thursday morning about 7:15.
We need to get you on a big buck squirrel.
Yeah. Actually, you want those small ones. You want the tender ones. They're
sure.
the better eating. So.
Sure.
You ever had squirrel fries?
No, we're gonna have some fried squirrel though. So.
All right, let's do it.
All right, guys. Well, this has turned into quite an ordeal here. So we did have a topic. We did talk about that topic. And I hope you guys all made it through this 2 hours and 4-minute podcast that we have going on here. So we enjoyed bringing it to you. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at Deerland Podcast. Also our website, deerlandpodcast.com. If you're on iTunes or Stitcher, Google Play, any of those, please subscribe so you get instant notification when we do have a new episode that is listed. Also, comment and rate us if you do enjoy it, and tell all your friends. We need to try to keep this momentum going and get the word out about what we're bringing you here. So I guess until next time, we'll see you later.